Welcome to Newsline Asia 24. It's Monday, January 6th. I'm Ayuchida in Tokyo. We start this hour in the Middle East. Iran says it will no longer comply with a 2015 deal aimed at curbing its nuclear program. The announcement adds further uncertainty to the region following the assassination of one of Iran's top military leaders by the United States. Sunday's decision means Iran will no longer restrict the number of centrifuges or the level to which it can enrich uranium. The statement did not mention any specific criteria for raising enrichment, but did say that it would continue to cooperate with the International Atomic Energy Agency. Sunday's statement reiterated that Iran would be willing to resume compliance if the U.S. lifts sanctions it reimposed after withdrawing from the agreement in 2018. Iran was expected to provide an update on its nuclear program this weekend, but the announcement came just days after the death of General Qasem Soleimani. He was killed in a U.S. airstrike at Baghdad International Airport in Iraq Friday. The U.S. Defense Department says the action was taken at the direction of President Donald Trump to protect U.S. personnel abroad. Huge crowds took to the streets across Iran over the weekend to mourn and pay their respects to the slain military commander. The general's body arrived back in the southwestern city of Avaz Sunday. Iran's state-run news agency reports more than 1 million people attended a funeral there. His casket was then flown to the sacred city of Mashhad. Another funeral is scheduled to take place in Tehran on Monday, which the government has declared a national holiday. Soleimani was a highly influential leader responsible for overseeing many of the country's military operations outside Iran, including in Syria, Lebanon, and Yemen. Meanwhile, a military advisor to Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei says Iran will retaliate against the U.S. It is unclear what form that will take, but a former senior military official said Israel may be targeted. For its part, Israel is praising President Trump for ordering the killing, but Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu held back on criticizing Iran. Observers say it may be an attempt to avoid provoking Tehran or the militias it backs in the region. Now, the fallout from Soleimani's death is spreading across the region. Iraq's parliament has approved a resolution calling on all foreign forces to leave the country, including U.S. troops. The vote comes on the heels of the government denouncing Friday's assassination, which it has described as a violation of the country's sovereignty. Iraqi interim Prime Minister Adel Abdul Mahdi added that the interests of Iraq and the U.S. have diverged and that trust has been breached. With the backing of Parliament, the Iraqi government will negotiate with Washington on the U.S. troops stationed in Iraq. President Trump weighed in on the vote during a briefing with reporters on board Air Force One. According to Reuters, Trump said he expects Iraq to pay for its military investments and that the U.S. is not leaving unless they pay us back for it. He also threatened to impose sanctions that would make Iranian sanctions look somewhat tame. To get some perspective on the situation, I am joined by Professor Koichiro Tanaka. He's an expert on Middle Eastern affairs from Keio University. So, Professor, Iran is pledging to retaliate, but it has so far been vague in its threats. What do you think Tehran will do next?
Well, that's not clear. They have said that their target would be solely military. That would mean that it could be the military personnel or the military installations throughout not only the region, maybe the world, anywhere that we can consider. Now, the problem is we don't know when that's going to happen, how they're going to do it, maybe only words that they're talking today, but we just cannot discard that someday something might happen, and that's really scary. And we shouldn't forget that General Soleimani was a kind of person that was quite important, not only for the military, but also for the people of Iran. They won't forget that he had devoted himself during the Sacred War, which meant that they had fought against the Iraqis in the 1980s, and also during the threats that they have faced in the 90s and 2000s, especially from Al-Qaeda and Islamic State.
What's the likelihood that this could become a regional conflict?
Well, I'm hoping that it won't, but we shouldn't forget again that it's not only the Iranians that are mad about this, it's also the Iraqis and also the Lebanese Hezbollah. they have also lost a figure that has been quite important for their operations. And also, these institutions are all connected to Iran. So Iran could pull the string anywhere when they want to. And also, we should consider that these individuals associated with the organizations outside of Iran could act randomly and also on their own.
What about the 2015 nuclear agreement? You know, Iran announced that it will no longer abide by it. How serious could that get?
They still have a chance. I mean, they're still giving the Europeans a chance to negotiate with them. And it all boils down to the point whether they can see any sort of a concrete and tangible measures that could save their economy. But again, this is not totally associated, even though it's not totally related to the killing of General Soleimani. It did have an impact. I do consider that the measures that the Iranians are actually going to take from now on regarding the nuclear agreement, that could have been impacted well by the killing of the general.
Now, how is all this going to impact Japan, which has close ties with both Iran and the U.S., especially now that the Prime Minister, Shinzo Abe's cabinet, has approved plans to dispatch the self-defense forces to the region?
Right. It comes in a very unfortunate moment. And I believe that now, regardless of what we say to the Americans and also tell the Iranians, we might get ourselves involved in this mess. And that wasn't the way that people here in Nagatacho was considering. But so I have to say that it's very unfortunate for us and also for the politicians, as well as the forces that are going to be dispatched to the region.
Professor, thank you. Meanwhile, the leaders of France and Britain have expressed solidarity with the U.S. in the wake of Soleimani's killing. Emmanuel Macron and Boris Johnson spoke with Trump on Sunday in separate phone calls. According to the French presidential office, Macron expressed concern that any retaliation by Iran could worsen an unstable situation. He also said Tehran must exercise restraint. In a statement about his phone call, Johnson said Soleimani had played a role in the deaths of thousands of innocent civilians. He said his country would not lament the general's killing. Johnson also called on all parties to exercise restraint, saying retaliation would lead to more violence. An Islamic extremist group has attacked a military base in Kenya. 3 Americans were killed, including 1 soldier. The U.S. military says the Somali group Al-Shabaab attacked the Kenya Defense Force military base near the southeastern border with Somalia early on Sunday. It says a service member and 2 contractors were killed. 2 U.S. Defense Department officials were wounded. Reuters news agency quoted witnesses and military sources as saying the attack lasted about 4 hours, destroying U.S. helicopters and other military vehicles. Nearly 150 U.S. personnel were reportedly at the base to train and support Kenyan soldiers fighting al-Shabaab. Now, the flare-up between the U.S. and Iran also affecting the markets. And for that, Gene, we are going to go to you. Gene Otani joins us from the business desk. So, you know, officials at the Tokyo Stock Exchange kicking off the new year, the first trading day of the year, but not exactly a smooth start, was it?
That's right. Some investors are definitely worried about this situation, the impact the tensions will have on global markets. They've already hit the Nikkei average hard, sending the benchmark down more than 2%. About 200 people attended the ceremony for the first trading session of 2020, but officials are cautious given all the uncertainty in the Middle East.
Stock prices, currencies, and oil prices are being hit hard by growing geopolitical risks. I hope we will overcome these challenges and make 2020 a prosperous year.
I'm confident the economy's virtuous cycle will continue on the back of improving employment and income levels.
Share prices were down across the board, hitting export-related firms especially hard. The Nikkei fell more than 500 points from last year's close. On the foreign exchange market, the dollar weakened against the yen to a 3-month low. Many investors are buying the yen as a haven. Buy orders also flooded the Tokyo Commodity Exchange. Crude oil futures hit a new 7-month high as worries about oil supply took hold.